All right, you're listening to 91.5 WUML Lowell Blues Deluxe, and I have the distinct pleasure and honor of having Peter Veteska on with me today. How you doing, Peter?
I'm doing great. How are you? And it's my honor to be on here.
Thank you.
You're
Let's
welcome.
um let's go back early on in your career when you were a kid. Where did you grow up, Peter?
Well, I was born in Manhattan and I grew up in Brooklyn, Bushwick, Brooklyn. But that was until 10 years old. Then we moved to Jamaica, Queens, which
Wow,
is
so
where,
you're all over New York City.
yeah, I'm a true New Yorker. And I later moved to Jersey in my early 20s. But Jamaica, Queens is where my musical journey really started. And I met musical friends and
Yeah.
musicians and so forth. So.
So listening to music as you were as a kid, what kind of music, what types of music were you hearing on the radio? What did you like to listen to or hear as you were growing
Yeah.
up?
So I was the youngest of five children, and my sister had, in my opinion, very good taste in music. She was listening to 10 Years After, Alvin Lee, which I really dug. I got into Allman Brothers.
Yeah.
Um, and then I was really into that music big time. And then I met some musician friends when I started playing guitar, and we got into Led Zeppelin and that kind of music. So all the classic rock stuff. And those bands are all rooted in blues. You know,
Yep.
they're second, third, fourth generation blues guys, learning from the masters.
So when
Eric
did you
Clapton, Cream.
when did you actually dig into the blues actual blues artists themselves? How old were you when you dug into
Yeah.
that?
So what happened? We became like this rock band. It was a trio, and we were playing around. And we started. Our first gig was at 14 and a half, and we were getting paid by the time we were 15. And we're doing a lot of like local stuff. Then branching out to Long Island, and started writing original music, recording original music. But it was rock, and rock was kind of changing then because we were going into the new wave period, as you know, and disco was
Yep.
big, and I never liked disco. So I kind of put the guitar down when I was like 20, 21 years old. But I've always continued to listen to music, all types of music. I got into jazz, I got into John Coltrane. And then when the economy tanked here back in 08, 09, I'm self-employed. I was working really hard. I want to change my life. I want to reconnect with what was important, and music was always important to me. So I started purchasing a guitar here and there, started playing. But I really liked the blues because there was a simplicity but a complexity to it that I really liked. And there's all different genres and all different flavors of blues. So at first I was getting into like Stevie Ray Vaughan. Brian Setzer was an influence because he's kind of like rockabilly as well, and got into Robert Cray, and then I started going to these blues jams when I felt like I was confident enough to go out and play back in 2012, which is about 11 years ago. And I met some guys at the blues jam, and then in 2013, 14, I formulated Peter V Blues Train back then. And the only original guy is the drummer. So Alex Diagnos, who's a great drummer.
So you mentioned John Coltrane. That was an interesting comment from you. I'm a big John Coltrane fan too, and people don't realize that he had a lot of blues influence in his playing as well.
Yes, he did. And he also influenced Duane Allman big time. If you listen to interviews of Duane Allman, they were very influenced, like that whipping post, a lot of that melodic playing he was doing, and a lot of Coltrane influence there. And I'm a big Coltrane fan. I mean, I listen to jazz a lot. I listen to jazz probably more than I listen to blues. I think it's always good, from my perspective, to remove yourself from what you're immersed in, so you get a different perspective. So
Well, the
that's all.
two big fusion guys in the beginning were him and Miles Davis. That was
Yes,
they
yes,
were the kings of
yes,
taking the genre and just expanding it to levels that no one ever expected.
yes. And if I'm
After
not
the old,
mistaken,
go ahead.
yes, I'm sorry. If I'm not mistaken, I believe John Coltrane's the only musician that quit Miles Davis's band. So
Probably, yeah. I'm guessing yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, the
And
two of them.
Robin Ford, who's a great blues guy, played with Miles Davis. So
Yeah. Oh yeah. So there was that period of time where you weren't playing. What were you doing during that period and not playing?
well,
Day
you know, I have
job,
a
right?
wood. I have my own business. I do architectural woodworking. So I do the architecture part of it and the actual physical part of it, the woodworking. So I go into people's homes and I transform them with adding all this architectural detail stuff like corporate ceilings, bars, cabinetry, and all that. So I have those creative juices flowing from that aspect, and I was really into that for a long time. And then I got somewhat disappointed uh, when the economy tanked because it impacted my business heavily. And I said, you know, I've been doing this for 20 plus years at that point, and I just want to make some changes in my life. But when I was doing my business, you know, I was making pretty good money. So I would go to the city, to the Blue Note. I see some jazz acts, you know, got to meet George Benson. Saw a lot of guys like that. So, and so forth. So,
So 2012, 2013 is when you restarted your career in music.
yes,
And
correct.
you have two recordings or more. I saw there were more recordings over time that you've had,
I have 7 albums out.
right? When did
I really,
the other five, there's two that I know of currently. When were the
right.
other five recorded?
The first one was recorded in late 2014, released 2015,
Yeah.
and then almost every year subsequent to that, I released the second, third, fourth, fifth. The last 4 albums have done quite well. The last 2 albums, which is my last album, which was So Far So Good, and my current album, Filter, have done extremely well. They're sitting at number one. You know, my current album's
Yep.
number one on the contemporary blues charts for 5 weeks, and number two on the overall blues charts. Just this week, it's number three. But the last 2 weeks, it was number one. So, you know, for me, it's a great accomplishment because a lot of the people that get played on the radio stations, these are full-time musicians, as you know. You
Yep.
know, I'm still running a full-time business and we're doing this kind of on the side. But I work with some musicians, one that you might know, Jeff Levine,
I know who he
he
is.
went to,
Yep.
yes, he went to Berkeley. He knows a lot of cats from Boston and all those guys up there. Because a lot of great musicians up in your area.
So let's talk about the New York Blues Hall of Fame. I saw that you were a winner. How did that happen?
Well, I was an inductee. So,
Inductee, I mean.
yeah, yes. And I was on the blues scene for about 3, 4 years, and I caught the attention of Michael Packer, who was the gentleman running that part of the Hall of Fame, and we hit it off. And he liked the fact that I was one of the few local guys in Jersey producing albums, original content. There's a lot of good players out there, a lot of good blues musicians, but a lot of them don't do a lot of original content. There's a couple, but not many. So he said, you know what, I like what you're doing, et cetera, and I'm going to induct you to the Blues Hall of Fame.
That's great.
So, and that happened pretty early. I mean, that happened in, I think, 2016 on the anniversary of 9/11 too. So,
That's
yeah, then
great.
Michael Packer, I think a year or two after, passed away. He died of some, I believe, cancer. And then on my fourth album, there's a song called "Lay Down, My Friend," which I wrote about him. And that when I heard he died, I wrote that song within 3, 4 minutes. It just flowed out, the music and the lyrics. And I got one of his musicians, Eddie, who co-sang and he played congas on it. And I think he was happy to do a tribute to his old bandmate.
Tell me about the New York blues scene, clubs and places to play these days. I know it's one of those things where some go away, some stay. I mean,
Yes,
there's a bunch. There were at one time there was a lot of clubs in New York to play.
yes, yes. And let me just say this: when I was inducted, Michael, I was residing and living in New Jersey, of course, for quite some time already. So Michael said, "Do you want to be in the New Jersey Hall of Fame or New York Hall of Fame?" Well, I said, "My roots are in New
New
York, so
York.
I'm always going to be consider myself a New Yorker. You can tell that by my accent, right?"
Yeah.
So he goes, "Okay, we'll do New York." And so I haven't played that many places in New York, but we did do BB King's twice. And the second time about 2, 3 months before they finally closed it, which was unfortunate. So most of my playing has been in New Jersey and or PA.
Oh,
So
so not New York.
not so much New York. No, we played at BB King's twice in somewhere around there, 2016, 17, 18, and that was about it.
The Iridium, the Bitter End. There's a whole bunch of
No,
places.
no, Iridium. We were just up and coming, so we wouldn't have gotten a gig at the Iridium. That's for more blues guys that are more established, like the guy by you, Albert Cummings,
Yep.
someone like that. Matt
Yep.
Schofield played there. I
Yep.
saw Matt Schofield there. I enjoyed him.
He's great,
And
huh?
yeah, he's very good. Yeah, I was really into him when he first came out. I liked his melodic content and how he played the blues differently, more like a jazz guy, where he played all the changes, as opposed to some of the old traditional blues guys. But I have since weaned myself from that complete style of playing, and I've kind of tried to find my own voice. So
Yep.
I merged the two. So
There's a
that's
great
kind of my.
video of him and Oz Noy playing at
I
the
saw
Iridium.
it. I
Great,
saw
isn't
that
it?
one. Yeah, yeah. I think it was Osnoy's gig, and he stepped up, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
I've
yeah, pretty
interviewed
sure.
Oz. He's a great guy.
Yeah, he's from Israel, right?
Yeah, he's from Israel.
Yeah, yeah, he's a great player.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
just saw something with. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
No, I just saw something with him and Joe Bonamassa.
Yeah,
You know
from the Iridium.
that.
I think it was the
Yes,
Iridium.
yes, it was. It was the Iridium.
Yep. So you're on Blue Heart Records. How did you
Yes.
get that deal?
So a few years back, I was talking to one of my friends, Bob, a great blues player, a local guy, Bob Del Rosso, and I said, Bob, I'm releasing my third album, but I want to get it out there. You know, I want people to hear it. And so I did some research, and I found out that Betsy from Blind Raccoon is the top radio promoter. You know,
Yep.
publicist to get
She
that.
she
And
is.
yes, and I asked him. I said, it's an investment. Should I do it? He goes, definitely. You spent this much on the recordings. Just go for it, right? So I hooked up with Betsy, and she did my third album, and the subsequent albums since. And she's the partner in Blue Heart, so she's kind of the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh. So the last five albums are with Betsy and or Blind Raccoon. The last two are with Blind Raccoon.
And they've helped out a lot, I take it, huh?
Tremendously, yes, tremendously so. Because without them, no matter how good your music is, if the right people don't get to hear it, doesn't get in the right hands, it's not going to go anywhere. So they're instrumental in getting me played throughout the world and helping with the charting. And then I've had a bunch of musician friends approach me and say, "Well, I'm going to use Betsy because I want to be number one." And
Yeah.
it's not a guarantee, because I've had a few musicians, and some of them make top 10. They might make number 5 for 1 week, but it's difficult. It's not hard. It's hard to be up there. And I'm truly very focused when I go in the studio and write and do all that stuff. And I'm really honed in on trying to create my own sound. And everybody's on their own musical journey, and I'm on mine. And I call it the East Coast blues type sound, because it's you listen to a lot of blues, it's downtrodden. And I tell people my blues went to therapy, so it's upbeat, it's
Yeah.
driven, it's got rhythmic aspects to it, it's got funk, and it's all the stuff that I was exposed to living in New York.
There you go.
So
So we talked
the
about
guys
New
that
York. We talked about New York clubs. Let's talk about home clubs in New Jersey and Pennsylvania too. You get to play a lot of those, and what's your favorite place to play in either New Jersey or PA?
well, in New Jersey, I like the Wonder Bar, and it's not a blues club, but I've had a few CD release parties there, and we've had a great crowd. And I've played there for other events, some charity events and other stuff. And I like that club because I like the stage, I like the sound system, and I like the energy that the crowd. But anywhere I play, I'm happy. I don't play too many bars. I try to play more festivals. I'm really focused more on playing larger
Fest.
venues,
Yeah.
and I truly get motivated when there's a lot of people in the audience, and it just brings out the best in me and best in our band. Like, we have a really good band. Every musician's really excellent.
Tell me about
In
the
my
band. Who's in the band?
Okay, so it's me. I'm the guitarist and singer. The core of the band is me, the drummer, Alex Diagnis, who's been with me
From the
from the beginning.
beginning. Yep.
From the beginning, yeah. Yeah, we get along because he's a New Yorker, you know. He's from Brooklyn originally in Staten Island. But we both call ourselves New Yorkers. And then we had a gentleman called Kumoji, who was in our band, and he was from the Bronx. And the three of us were a really strong unit and very tight too. We used to socialize and so forth. But then his life changed a little. You know, he had some grandchildren, and he wanted to spend more time with his grandchildren. So he said, "Pete, I'm going to step down. I'll play with you till you find somebody else." And I've been using two other guys, primarily Chuck Hearn, who's a great bass player. He played on Leslie West's Queen's last album, and he was the bassist for that. And this other gentleman, Rick Prince, both from PA, and he's a very good bass player as well. Different bass styles, but you know, we extract whatever they got to offer and incorporate it into our sound. So they both recorded with us on the last couple of albums, the last two albums. And then the number four guy who really brought this band up a few notches is Jeff Levine, who's primarily a B3 player for us. He does do some piano, and he's terrific. He's
Adding
just
that adds when you have a B3 or an organ or a
yeah,
piano, it
yeah,
adds.
yes. And I've always liked like the Allman Brothers, like when the keyboards, how it made the band sound larger, and also like Deep Purple, for example.
Yep.
And it just has a unique sound, and it's got a, you know, the sound that we have is kind of like a freight train coming down the tracks hard, you know.
Well, that's
So
what it's called, the Blues Train, right?
mhm.
See?
No mystery there.
No,
So
none at all. So some of the artists that blues artists that growing up that you liked, and have you ever opened for any of those guys or met any of those guys? I mean, like you said, Robin Ford is one of those guys.
yeah, Robin Ford's a terrific guitarist. Yeah, I opened up for Matt Schofield
Wow.
in the Stanhope House in New Jersey, which is in it's an old it's really like a musical institution, that place, and it's in trouble. It's going to be possibly sold and developed, and they're going to knock down this old historic building built in the mid 1700s. So I
That's
know there's
sad.
people out there trying to save it, and if I was tapped to help them out, I would be more than happy to do so. But I think the New York, New Jersey, North Jersey Blues Society is instrumental in trying to save that, and they've been petitioning all the blues societies throughout the country to join them, and they've been helpful. So for Matt Schofield, BB King's, when we played at BB King's, the funny thing is BB King's has two rooms, the main room and then Lucille's. And we played in the second room, and in the other room at simultaneously was the bassist for Deep Purple. We talked about Deep Purple
Yep.
earlier.
Yep.
And he was doing his solo act. And so when we had a break, we went and checked him out. It was terrific. So, but yeah, most of the guys we opened for are, um, we play blues festivals. So sometimes we're the main act. You know, we played this big festival 2 summers ago in Wildwood, New Jersey, Anglesey, thousands of people in the audience. And we were the headliners of a 3-day event on Saturday night. And I think we're going to be headlining that this year as well. Just haven't confirmed all that information. And yeah, that's it.
Let's talk about the latest record.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about, you have 6 or 7 records. Tell me about how this one came about. I know you're constantly writing and recording, and you've got lots of music. Tell me
Yeah.
about
I
tell me
have,
about this last one.
yeah. And just so you know, I probably have enough original content to do another album already.
Wow.
But obviously, you have to let things simmer, and because your taste might change, you know. This album, our last album was quite successful. It did really well on the RMR charts, which is the radio charts. It was #4 album of 2022,
That was
right
so
behind
far
Buddy
so
Guy.
good, right?
Yeah, yeah, and we were very happy with that. That album was done during COVID, so I invited a lot of guest musicians because everybody had a lot of downtime. This album was a little different. This album I wanted to be more just the blues train, And so I write songs, and I say, hey guys, I got some songs. And I send them a basic idea, but we really learn it in the studio. We just
Yeah.
do it once or twice, and
Yeah.
then we record it live. So it doesn't get sterile. It always has that vitality and life feel to it, and that's very important. And then we just do minimal overdubs. Like I might re-sing. I often re-sing everything because sometimes they don't know the song that well, so I'm kind of cueing them, and I'm not focused on the singing part. And then I'll go in and do some overdubs on a guitar solo, for example. But also on this album, we because our bass player for the last couple albums, Kumo G, couldn't do it anymore. There's about four or five, I think four songs where we got two different bass players, which I mentioned earlier, Chuck Hearn and Rick Prince. And then we have this female singer. Her name is Jen Barnes. She has her own band called Jenny Barnes with her husband, and they do a lot of bar gigs locally. But she's just a great soulful singer, and she sang on our last album, and on this album, I wanted her presence to be larger. So she sang on, I think, three of the songs, and I wrote 8 songs. One of them I co-wrote with Jen Barnes. I wrote the music, she wrote the lyrics and melodic, the melody to the singing, and it came out really good.
How cool is
And
that, huh? You get a
yeah, it's very
co-write.
cool. And it was easy. I sent her the music, and she came up with something. We did it all over the phone, because she lives in a different part of New Jersey than I do, and and then we just met in the studio, and we laid it down, and she did her thing, and she's terrific.
That's
And
great.
she's one of those singers that she can nail it in one take. It doesn't take her five. I mean, she's just a natural. And I was fortunate to discover her through my girlfriend. My girlfriend Patty said, because I was looking for a girl singer, and she said, check out Jen Barnes. She's really, really good. So I checked her out, and I was really impressed with her, blown away.
There you
So,
go. That worked
so
out now, didn't it?
yeah, yeah. And when you do something like that, you got to be a little secure in yourself, because when we go out and play, and she's alongside me, she's got a terrific voice. And people like her voice better than mine, I believe. So based on the audience reaction, because she's that soulful, and she can hit those really high notes. She's got a lot of power, and she's got a lot of blues in her.
That's good.
Hmm.
Maybe you'll do a
So
whole record with her someday soon.
that could happen. That could happen. It's been discussed. So
Already, huh? That's good.
yeah, yeah.
So you
So
say you have music, you have some more a bunch of music ready for another record. When are we gonna see that? When's that gonna
oh,
happen?
I think I got this. I think I want these albums to like let them speak for themselves and play out and go through fruition, and maybe I'm going to wait maybe 18 months before I release another one. It might be 2 years. What happens is, just like I do in my own business, when I work for a client doing woodworking, because my strong suit is designing. It's what discerns me from the rest of the pack. And I tell them, don't try to do too much at one time, because you might see something, or you might be in a different place where you want to incorporate something else. So if you do too much at one time, you won't be able to do it. And it's the same thing with music. I'm usually in a certain state of mind musically at a certain period, and then I'm always evolving. I'm listening to different people. I'm listening to maybe new jazz guys, and I'm picking up some stuff that's I just a spark. It gives me a spark, and then I take it somewhere. And if you heard the original thing that I listened to and what I came up with, it doesn't resemble it at all. But we all get inspiration from somewhere, and we all borrow from someone else. So
Well, that's
everyone
good.
does.
That's good that you
Yeah,
have all that inspiration and that you have that
yeah,
much music ready to
yeah.
go.
I
Because
think for me,
like you said, it's got to gel. You gotta play it for a while, and it changes over time too. From what I
yeah,
know from
yeah.
musicians.
And the advantage I think I had over a lot of musicians is I left the music scene for so many years. So a lot of these guys have been like, the local guys I know, they've been doing this 30, 40 years. And I don't think I could do this for 30, 40 years. I think I would get bored. So right now it's still like a hot thing for me, and I'm excited.
Yeah,
We're doing well. We're getting well received. And I think you got to strike the iron while it's hot. So, you know.
and that's what you're doing.
I'm striking it
Yeah, you're
with the freight
striking it.
train, the blues train. So, Yeah.
So tell me, what's the most important thing that's happened to you in your career, your musical career, not your regular job career, but this career?
I don't know if I could pinpoint it to one thing, but I think my alignment with Betsy and Blind Raccoon has, for me, been a game changer. And fortunately, I made it work to my advantage with her help, and it's opened a lot of doors. I mean, I've met you probably
Yep.
indirectly
Yep.
as a result of that, and other people that interview me, and just getting on different radio shows and the recognition, all these reviews. I'm getting this album is getting reviews that are all like 5-star reviews from all over. Metronome magazine, Boston-based magazine.
Yeah, I know them.
I just got emailed a terrific review, one of the top albums, they said.
Brian Owens
And
is Metronome magazine. I know him.
yes, he might be the gentleman that reviewed my
Yep.
thing.
Yeah,
So,
he's a good guy. He's been around a long time. He's been doing that a long time.
mhm. And
Um,
what I want to say too is there's sometimes resentment when you have a little success from like the local guys and from other people. And I tell people, blues is such a diverse music, and it comes in so many different flavors. Obviously, a lot of people like vanilla, but my blues is not vanilla. My blues has a lot of different flavors in it, and different feels, and it's okay. Just if you don't like it, it's fine. If you like it, it's great too. But everybody has to go on their own journey. A lot of people like Joe Bonamassa,
yeah.
and a lot of people don't like him. And he does videos complaining why people are saying bad stuff about him. He shouldn't be focused on that. He should just play his music, and
Be focused on
he
the
does it
music.
well.
Yeah. Be
Yeah,
focused on your
if
music and make sure that you're continuing to present it to everyone.
yeah,
The rest is gravy, is what I call
yeah,
it.
yes. And my musical philosophy is, I don't want to be the fastest guitarist on the planet. That's not my goal. I just want to make music and that's memorable. I make the analogy: if you drive through a beautiful New England town at 85 miles per hour, you're not going to reap the rewards of how beautiful it is, right? It's going to pass right by you.
Right.
But if you slow down and take it in, you know, and that's more my approach.
Well, how do people find out about you, Peter? You have a
Well,
website?
I have a website, peterveteskabluestrain.com. It's just my name, bluestrain.com. No dashes, no space. And it gets visited a lot because I could see it's getting like 100 visits a day right now. So the last couple of weeks. So I think we're generating a lot of interest. And the fact that we've been able to produce pretty good quality albums for in a pretty quick period um, is catching people's attention. And I'm also an independent artist, even though I'm aligned with Blue Heart. I still um, produce my own records. I don't have a producer. I want to have
Yeah.
really full control of the musical content because I hear it all in my head, the finished product. When I have a song in my head, I know where I'm going with it. It's not a guessing game. It's not. Sometimes it goes a slightly different direction. But the gentleman I record with, Joseph DeMeo, who owns Surefire Recording Studio, he's a co-producer, and he's kind of like when you're immersed in something. Sometimes you need an independent ear to help you, and he really guides me, and he helps me get like really good guitar sounds too
That's good.
on that because he's got this vintage amp that I like, this Marshall amp. It's called a Plexi, and I don't have to use any pedals. Like I see these guys all show up with pedals, and my philosophy is the more
Natural sound, direct.
yeah, more natural. I don't want pedal boards to cloud what's happening from the soul coming out of the amp. You if you can tap into it more naturally, I think that's what the blues is about. Blues is about just plugging it in and letting it out. It's not about collecting amps, all these great amps. It's just about making music. You can make music with a cheap guitar. I'm telling you, you could do it with a
And a
$300
cheap amp.
guitar.
You can do it with both.
Yes, yes, because a lot of it's in the hands, and
Right.
so
You ready for a left
it's
field question?
yeah, sure.
You ever thought of putting out a jazz record? Because you have a jazz background. You like listening to jazz music. You ever thought of
Yeah.
that?
Well, yes and no, because I like to do stuff on a high level, and I would feel like I'm more on the entry level side as being a jazz guitarist. I could do the singing because I used to like joke around and do like Sinatra stuff. I can I
Well, I'm
could have a
talking
stiff.
instrumental, more jazz instrumental type of a
Yeah,
record.
yeah. I mean, I can do it musically. It's just I would have to surround myself with musicians that are more acquainted with jazz. I know my drummer can do jazz. Because we do some jazz blues like when we jam,
The reason
and
I
Jeff
ask
definitely can do.
the reason I ask is you talk about the influences from those records that you listen to,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
that it might be a stretch for you to try to do it, but it might be something different for you to stretch out and
Yeah, yeah. It's not off the table. Definitely not off the table.
you
It's something I've
you must
thought
be.
about.
What'd you think of a question like that? I just thought of it as you're telling me about
Yeah,
influences.
well, I think it tells me that you're listening, and obviously you're saying to yourself, well, you've done 7 albums blues. Why don't you try something else, right? And so it's probably how you got to that place with that question.
Well,
And yeah, it makes sense.
it's not so much that it's you're telling me about your influences and where the influences come for those blues records, and it's from jazz guys you're listening to some of it,
Yep,
and
definitely.
you would think that eventually you'd stretch and try to put something. You don't even have to put something out. You could just try it and see how it works.
If you heard my third and fourth album, and I'll send them to you if you'd like.
Yeah, please
Definitely on
do
my
so.
third, I was pushing some jazz in there. And then I got a little criticism on some of the reviews. So because I was kind of trying to meld more jazz in there. And I pushed back on that because you have to respect the genre of the blues, I feel.
You got to get in with jazz guys, and
Yes.
then it's a whole different story. If you're
Yeah.
playing with guys that's all
Yeah.
they do all day long is play
Yeah.
jazz music.
Yeah. I heard
Um,
Eric Clapton say a quick story. He said when he talked to all the old blues guys that he met, BB King and all that, they said he asked him about the blues. He goes, "Well, we're only doing this till we get good enough to be in a jazz band."
there you go.
So
Well,
there's a little truth in that
yep,
because not that blues guys aren't great players, they are, but it's a different style, and jazz is a lot more sophisticated, as you know.
yep.
So.
But there's a lot of jazz guys that sound like blues guys when you listen to them too.
Yeah, and there are some guys. There's a Guy King, I think. He's a blues guy, but he does a lot of jazz, and he's a great player. And he plays with his thumb. He doesn't use a pick,
Yep.
and he knows all the complex jazz chords. I know some of them, and so his musical language is sophisticated and complex. But he does dumb it. Not that's not the right word. Sorry. He does simplify it so it becomes more bluesy.
Right.
You know.
And we were
So
talking about Osnoy. He does both. He can do both very well.
I could hear that. And Matt Schofield has definitely, and Robin
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Robin Ford can definitely do jazz. I
You
mean, he
can
played
hear
with
it.
Miles Davis.
You
He
can
played
hear
with
it
Miles
in
Davis.
Matt Schofield's music. You can hear the jazz influence. And that's
Hmm. I have a little in my playing too, in my
yep.
soloing, and some of my chords. I like to add more color and flavor with my chords, but not where it's dissonant. I just want to keep it where it's relatively in keeping with the blues.
Early Matt Schofield, he covered a Soul Live song, which is he does a great version of it.
What
Uncle
song?
Junior, it's called.
Oh yes, I've heard that. Yeah, there's a song by 10 Years After on one of their albums. The last song on the album, it's on the Watt album, I think. It's
Yep.
called Uncle Something. It's a real jazz.
Yep.
And he really just wails on it. It's terrific. And
Those
the
guys.
band is like,
Go ahead.
yeah, no, those guys started off as jazz guys. They were doing Woodchopper's Ball and all that.
Yep.
Yeah,
And Soul Live is from New York. They're all from New York, I think. Those guys.
yeah. See
Eric
that?
Krasno. I forget the drummer's name. They're a great little trio, killer trio. and
I think
Matt
the club down
Schofield,
there.
huh?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Matt Schofield covered one of their songs, and he did a great version of it. It's more bluesy sounding than when they
Yeah.
do the song.
Yeah, Matt Schofield was when he first came on the scene, he was explosive. He caught the attention of every guitarist that I knew at the time, especially me.
Yeah,
And I got into him. And then I discovered from him Josh Smith, who I think is a great blues guitarist.
yeah.
You know, he aligned himself with Joe and so forth. So,
Well, there's a
like
lot
I said,
more. There's a lot more overseas. I'm finding. I mean, over in
yes,
England, there's a lot of
yes,
great guitar players in England right now.
hmm yes, yep. I'm familiar with some of them, I think, but
Lawrence Jones is a kid. He's over there. He plays.
yeah, there's a kid from Ireland too that's good. Davey Knowles,
Yeah,
he's good.
yeah. He
Yeah,
comes over here. He comes over
yeah
here a
he's
lot.
yeah he's kind of like a little bit more rock, like Rory Gallagher was.
Yeah, yeah,
He's a very good player. He's got a good voice too for a young guy. When he was young, he was on the early 20s. He had a really good voice,
yeah,
you know. And I tell people, Greg Orman was like in his early 20s doing that Fillmore East. He sounded like,
yeah,
some guy from the Mississippi in his 50s.
yeah.
So he had that soulful voice.
So, do you ever get up here in the New England area, up in Massachusetts, New Hampshire area at all?
Well, I really want to. I want to. I'm going to be in discussions with Bull Run, I think is the
Yeah,
place,
that's
and
not far from me.
Cairns in Rhode Island.
Yep.
I was talking to a musician who said he can hook me up. So we'll see what happens. I have trouble finding an agent to represent my band. It's very political, and I don't like playing the political game. I'm not that good at it. I've always been somewhat of an independent, and maybe that hurts me somewhat. But
Well, I know the owners of both of those places.
you do,
I do.
yeah.
I can
Well,
get
we'll
you.
talk.
I can get you some info on who to talk to.
Great.
Go
I would
direct.
love that.
You want to
Great.
go,
I mean, I
John?
know, I know, I
Go
know
ahead.
Paul Benjamin, who
Yep.
runs the big festival in Gloucester, and the Time Out Pub. We
And the
played there a
North
few times.
Atlantic too. The North
Yeah,
Atlantic
the
Blues
North
Festival.
Atlantic. Yep. And I think we'll be playing up there in Maine in late spring this year. So I
Good.
talked to him already.
Yeah,
So
John Chan is the guy at Chan's in Woonsocket,
right,
and
Woonsocket. Yeah.
then George Tachi is the guy at the Bull Run that I know. He's one of
Cool.
the owners. So
Nice.
I'll hook you.
Thank you.
I'll get you their info.
Yeah, I'll send him a CD.
There you go. So anyway, Peter, I just want to
Yeah.
say
Go ahead.
thank you for taking some
Oh,
time out of your busy day.
it's my pleasure, believe me. I'm always happy to talk about my music with someone that's well informed like you. And I
Thank you.
love New England, so I'll be going up there in 2 days, so doing some traveling.
Well,
Probably
if you
pretty.
come up to the area, doing a gig or something, you should come into the studio, our studio. It'd be great to have you.
I will definitely do that. If we're playing in the area, I'll definitely stop by.
All right.
All right.
Again, thank you again. And by the way, I'm going to be featuring your latest record right after the interview. We're going to do it the weekend of the 30th. I'm going to rebroadcast this, and we're going
So
to
right
play
before
your
New Year's.
whole CD all the way through after.
Wow. Well, I'll put that on my Facebook page when that happens.
Okay.
So,
I will
all
make
right.
sure you have the info.
Cheers, my friend. You have a
Thank you.
great holiday and a happy New Year.
Same to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. You're listening to 91.5 WUML Lowell. That was Peter Veteska.